I think what was happening, like literally in the streets with BMX freestyle, then with fixed gear riding, fixed gear freestyle, alley cat racing, all of that stuff was it was the same DIY, do it yourself attitude that really came from music scenes, punk rock, hip hop, and all of that connects to skateboarding as well, right? Like, cause that's really what it was. You were surrounded by people who made it okay to express yourself in the way that you wanted to.
This is Andrew Vontz, and you're listening to Choose the Hard Way, where the world's top performers share stories about the obstacles they've faced on the path to doing great things and what they've learned along the way. You are what you overcome. Choose the hard way. Please take a moment to hit 5 stars in Spotify or iTunes and leave a 1-word review. That helps more people connect with the powerful stories my guests share, and I really appreciate the support. The Beastie Boys, Spike Jonze, Doug Aitken, Public Enemy, Nine Inch Nails, Soundgarden, A Tribe Called Quest, The Matrix, Man of Steel, 300, Nike, Converse are but a few of the artists, films, and companies who have leveraged the creative talents of my good friend, Eric Matthies. Eric is a producer, director, photographer, poet, and activist. He's made numerous award-winning documentary films with his partner, Trisha Todd, including End of Truth, Killing the Messenger, The Deadly Cost of News, and Agile, Mobile, Hostile, A Year with Andre Williams. Eric's also the creator of Defy Apathy, a zine and a creative movement. You can learn more about Eric at ericmathies.me, that's ericmathies.me, and access the creative output of Defy Apathy at defyapathy.net. You can find those links in the show notes. We did a deep dive on Eric's path way back on episode 15. I'm really excited to have Eric back to talk about our experience creating the pilot for Spoken World, a TV show about cycling subcultures. That's right, TV, not streaming. The year was 2004, and a time before YouTube and TikTok. People used horse-drawn carriages for transport and primitive stone tools to start fires. You can find a link to the full pilot episode in the show notes. You are what you overcome. Choose the hard way.
I feel like we learned a lot from doing it, and we made some really cool stuff that only you and I got to see.
That's right.
So that, I mean, on the upside, we made a lot of really cool stuff, and on the downside, like, no one else really got to see it, and the core idea of what we were trying to do didn't really get realized.
That's the TLDR. Let's gavel it right there. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the spoken world.
Yeah, spoken world. So you want me to set it up, what it was?
Go for it.
All right.
The year was 2004.
Right, which means that my perception of what it was and yours might be a little bit different, which will be interesting. But essentially, we set out to create at the time, what would have been like a television-based series of stories about cycling, particularly in our community, in our city. I think we had plans to, if it took off, to go beyond just the Los Angeles area and continue to expand out as we met more people and networked with more members of the various factions of the cycling community, all the different little collectives.
The cycling Illuminati.
Yeah, the cycling Illuminati. But I mean, I think we met and did create stories about some really interesting and really diverse members of the community here in Los Angeles. We showcased something that now I think a lot of people take for granted, but at the time, I think we were really drawing connections between disparate groups in the various factions of people who are interested in bicycling here in this city that weren't as connected. I mean, we didn't have social media. We didn't have the huge influence, or at least the huge influence that social media has today. We certainly didn't have like the computer. Buster's back. Buster the dog is back for this episode. We certainly didn't have the idea that it could somehow be based on the computer as that being like a a streaming, none of that existed back then. So we were really trying to make something for television, which was, that was a steep learning curve.
The show focused on disparate worlds of the cycling community that we were both participating in at the time. And as mentioned on previous episodes, both Eric and I grew up skateboarding. Eric, it sounds like Eric was a lot better at skateboarding than I was, and was more deeply involved with people who were professional, successful at it. But skateboarding was an important part of my childhood, and as a sport, it's athletic, but it's a means of personal expression. And around skateboarding, you see all these different things blossom. It's fertile soil where many different artistic forms of expression spring up. You get different types of music. Like these days, like hip hop, guitar bass. I don't know where I'm going with this, but there's like a huge musical influence coming out of skateboarding. There are people doing all kinds of different art forms, and in the epoch when we were both involved in skateboarding, people like Mark Gonzalez and others were kind of Ed Templeton were pioneers of people coming out of skateboarding and going into like the world of the art world and becoming successful artists. Not that was the path for everyone, but just there's a lot of creative energy coming out of skateboarding. And later when I got involved first in mountain bike racing as a youngster back in Kansas City, Missouri in the late 80s, early 90s. And then I also was somewhat involved in road racing, but as the Lance effect happened, road racing really started to boom in the United States. Crit racing took off. Office parks across America in the early to mid 2000s just absolutely packed with people who were really excited about doing serious training, getting involved in road racing, getting involved in criterium racing. It was really taking off. It was going up and to the right. And at the same time, here in Los Angeles and other cities around the world, as we would later find out through the Bicycle Film Festival and other vectors where we started to see this happening, there was this skateboarding like movement springing up around people riding fixed gear bikes, and that kind of in conjunction with what was happening with critical mass. I think there was activism, there was an artistic component to it, and then that fixed gear scene was also kind of through alley cat racing was also crossing over into a new hybridized world, kind of between the two. It was like the bike racing equivalent of I don't know what I would, but it was outlaw racing, I guess. And it wasn't Red Hook or
I mean, that came out of it.
Red Hook came out of it, but there was just an awful lot happening, and Midnight Riders was starting to take off here in Los Angeles. Eric and I and Trisha, his wife, all participated in early iterations, early versions, early rides of Midnight Riders, which went from like a dozen people to I think
hundreds of people.
Literally, I think thousands of people by the time I kind of stopped being involved in it. It was nuts.
But it kicked off things like, well, let me go back a little bit. I mean, just to add to what you're saying about skateboarding, I think that the thing that's interesting about where we're going with this conversation, and to kick it off by talking about skateboarding, is the thing that skateboarding provided was a collective. Skateboarding provided a peer group in which you could celebrate your excitement about learning a trick or doing something on the skateboard. But it was also a place where, like, I wasn't the best skateboarder. I wasn't a very good skateboarder at all. But what I brought to the party was a camera. Like, I was willing to lie in the gutter and take pictures of the guys that were better than me. And then those pictures went to magazines, or really first they went into zines that we made ourselves and that we traded with other collectives. Right. And so I think what was happening here that we were looking at in cycling, kind of apart from the serious road racing and the kind of very regimented, like you were Cat 4, Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1, and it was all very organized. I think what was happening, like literally in the streets with BMX freestyle, then with fixed gear riding, fixed gear freestyle, alley cat racing, all of that stuff was it was the same DIY, do it yourself attitude that really came from, music scenes, punk rock, hip hop, and all of that connects to skateboarding as well, right? Like, because that's really what it was. You were surrounded by people who made it okay to express yourself in the way that you wanted to. And I think that was to me the difference in cycling between like the serious road racers or the serious mountain bikers and what was happening in the city where we were doing these events that you were just describing.
That scene also was at a point where it wasn't so codified that there were a bunch of rules or a specific uniform you had to wear to do it, which is, I feel like these days there's a specific look you have to have if you're urban fixed gear rider, urban fixed gear racer, and you have to have a certain presence on social media. It wasn't like that at the time. I would say where it is now is it's similar to where Burning Man is now, and not that there's some perfect pass for Burning Man or whatever, but with Burning Man now, there's a certain expectation that if you're a guy, you don't have a shirt on, you're wearing some kind of fringe leather vest with a fedora and some kind of like velvet bell bottoms, and if you're a woman, perhaps you have like furry boots on and a certain like outfit. There's like a dress code if you want to go to Burning Man now, and like you probably go to somebody who makes custom Burning Man clothes. You hang those clothes on a rack covered in plastic. You put that on your G6. You fly in. Maybe you parachute out if you're really bold, and then you like land, and a UTV side by side drives you into your fully catered camp where a masseuse is like going to give you a rub down and provide everything you need for the week.
The 1% of burners.
Yeah,
but that's all of them now, right? That's everybody.
I don't know.
But I mean, I think I get what you're getting at. And I think in cycling, sure, now Jesus Christ, you can buy gravel socks. Like, it's ridiculous. You know, I mean,
everybody needs gravel socks.
There's niche, any possible thing you could want, from your bicycle to your person to the vehicle you drive to the event in, can all be kitted out in some kind of niche way today. But in 2004, when we were fucking around with this idea of doing Spoken World, like, it was literally the spoke and world. Like, it was a bunch of people who, there was sort of a uniform to the fixed gear crew or a uniform to whomever, but there was always the person who would come with, their freak flag flying high and might be the best fixed gear rider. And they might be in like cowboy boots and tight, and like bell bottoms or something, as opposed to tight jeans and Converse or whatever the look was. So I think there's always someone who's going to come and break the status quo. I think what was exciting about that time was that it was very much grassroots. All of these things were kind of coming. People were realizing like, oh, I see other people when I commute to work, but then I'm going to see them in this more collective party atmosphere that night at Midnight Riders. And then, all of a sudden there's like someone passing around flyers that's talking about like, hey, let's get organized. Let's get Sharrows painted on the road. There was political activism that came out of those, basically like ride around the city and disrupt traffic and drink beers nights. Right? There
was a real DIY ethos at the time. And for me, at least, and it could just be because I walked into this thing at a certain moment in time in my life, I was receptive to it. It could have been going on for a long time before I found it. But when I found it, there have been a number of times in my life when I walk into a scene or a community and I'm like, holy shit, something cool. I'm going to use the word magical, but it felt like something magical was happening in Los Angeles at that time, and something that you might not get to experience that many times in your lifetime, probably. And the energy was palpable.
Yeah.
Like, there was just a lot going on. There was a bicycle kitchen was happening. Midnight Riders was taken off. Critical Mass was more of a Bay Area thing, but it was kind of happening here and starting to become more significant at that time, I felt like, and it hadn't yet reached the point where maybe it had outlived its purpose.
I feel like Midnight Riders was like the rowdy, like half brother of Critical Mass.
It was more about just pure fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there were people who politicized it, like we were just saying.
Yeah, it's about taking back the streets. Because literally there were so many bikes that they took over the streets of Los Angeles on like a Friday night. And I think also the fact, I was mentioning this to somebody today, just the idea that people in LA, which has an insane amount of stuff going on that you could potentially go do on a Friday night. And these were like hipster type people, a lot of them. And what they were electively doing was they were gathering like in the Walgreens parking lot or CVS parking lot in Echo Park or in the Tang's Donuts parking lot en masse. And then they're going on a themed bike ride for 3 or 4 hours and stopping and drinking beer or whatever. But like that was their Friday night.
Yeah. And you were proud to get that spoke card and have some souvenir of that ride that meant that you were there. Like when you rolled up to the next one, you had the card from the last one. So you were kind of part of a bigger thing that was a collective that was ongoing, you know, that. And also, by the way, like that led to those guys really that were kind of towards the end, like Roadblock and the guys that were really trying to organize that thing had befriended the local PD. The police were escorting us, you know, and that led to them
not just chasing us in helicopters.
Yeah. And arresting people and filming people for their nefarious security apparatus purposes, but actually saying like, we can't beat them. We're going to help them and help us get down the street safely. I mean, it took some of the outlaw fun out of it, but it was interesting to see that transition of it. We're drifting way far away from talking about the film we tried to make.
That's okay. It's all part of the story of the film.
You know, and then those guys went on to be the Wolfpack. They went on to do the famous marathon crash race, which still happens to this day, although now is sanctioned and is organized. And there's a bunch of other little organized races that those guys do that all spun out of that illegal alley cat kind of messenger racing scene, much like it did in Chicago, in New York. You know, all these cities that had a messenger scene ended up having that kind of outlaw race scene as well. We were just kind of late to the party here in LA because it wasn't as obvious, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, the racing came later, and on the more traditional road racing criterium side, it also was an interesting moment in time, again, because of Lance fever at that moment in time. And it's like, if you look at the UK, it's kind of been going through a somewhat analogous boom to what we went through in the early 2000s in the United States, since like leading up to and since the London Olympics and the rise of Sky, now Ineos. There's just been a massive level of success with British riders at the tour and the world tour level. And, you know, that's led to like a very intense and prolonged road racing culture in the UK.
Yeah.
But we had all of these elements, like we saw all of these ingredients, and we saw this opportunity to tell this bigger story, because at that time there weren't world tour riders going and doing Red Hook. Red Hook didn't exist. People who were in Alley Cat world didn't have anything to do with road racing world, and vice versa. And activism had nothing. There was nothing. You didn't have a Taylor Finney in the Peloton, you know, who was into being a painter and with a hipster mustache or whatever. Like, it was just like pro road racing was super normal. Like, it was normcore before there was normcore. And I mean, I think you would have gotten fired from the world tour if you'd had anything other than like a barbed wire tattoo in the early 2000s. I think maybe like Gert Jan
Klinger hadn't shown up yet.
Klinger actually, I mean, Klinger's a great example. Klinger got fired because he got a face tattoo, dude.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Klinger, because he got the face tattoo, and I think he got booted from USPS.
Huh.
Yeah, and then he was on like the local circuit. I remember seeing him with the Maori face tattoo at like CBR races. All this was going on. What was going on beyond that? I'd love to hear like what was going on in your professional life at the time, but for me, what was going on was I was working as a freelance journalist, writing about people, places, and things at the limits of human experience, which sometimes did encompass cycling and cycling culture, and other times was more about writing about celebrities, musicians, filmmakers, and various subcultures. That's kind of where I was focused at the time. but I was very much driven by my curiosity. And what I was doing was starting to cross over with some of what was happening in the world of action sports television. Right. And yeah, and then that's kind of how we ended up meeting, through a producer that we both know, who I don't even remember why he introduced us, because he also was passionate about bikes. He was a mountain biker.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had maybe shared your idea about the concept for the show with him, or if he just thought that like we would get along, which obviously we did, and we still do to this day.
Right.
So thank you for that introduction, John. That was very nice of you.
Thanks, John.
But yeah, I mean, what was going on for me that's relevant is that I came from a background where I had made skateboard videos and skateboard films and music videos, and was kind of very aware of the possibility of action sport media as a thing. And I was working professionally probably at that time I wasn't doing as many music videos. I was probably doing more the kind of feature film behind the scenes stuff that I had done for a chunk of time. But the main thing was that I had access to equipment and people and skills and could put the resources together along with the connections and the resources that you had that allowed us to make this thing. I mean, we made a pilot. We made a really good pilot. Yeah, we should inventory. I mean, I was trying to think about it earlier today. It's like we did a piece on Midnight Riders. We did a piece on the Bicycle Kitchen, which was like it still exists today, by the way. It's a cooperative place where you can come to learn how to fix your bike or get used parts. Or whatever.
Has an Earn a Bike program for kids, neighborhood kids.
Yeah, they have a women's only program and teaching bicycle mechanics to women. I mean, they teach to anybody, but they have very specific programs. So we did a thing on the kitchen. We did a thing on Midnight Riders. We did a thing on the scene around the Rose Bowl, which of course had been going on like well before any of this that we're talking about, and
still going on today.
I'm trying to remember what else we did.
Yeah, and the Rose Bowl thing, just to be clear for people who don't live in LA, the Rose Bowl on Tuesday and Thursday nights from March until September, it's more or less an unsanctioned race.
Right.
Where road racers show up.
It's a training ride.
Yeah, it's a training ride, but I believe, I don't know if they still have a finish line painted on the ground, but there is a finish line painted on the ground. And during my era, that's when you would get hitters like Jamie Palinetti, Rashawn Bahati. You sometimes would get Tony Cruz, who was riding for Postal Service at the time. There are a lot of heavyweight riders out there. And, part of what's really interesting about competitive cycling as a discipline, I don't know if pro riders would even do this today, but at that time, I was a Cat 4, then a Cat 3, and left competitive road racing before then, which whatever, like that's totally unimpressive. But I really loved the sport, and I was training like 350 miles a week at the time. And to be able to go out and ride with guys who were at the very top of the domestic scene, literally like rubbing elbows with them in a pack of, there would be 150, 200 riders. It was amazing. So that was one of the communities that we captured, and it's a real community, and it was incredibly diverse also, which for road racing in the United States is not super common. It was an incredibly diverse group of people in terms of socioeconomically, racially, gender-wise. Like everybody was out there at the Rose Bowl. It was a really cool thing that I feel lucky to have gotten to take part in. I have no idea what it's like today.
I haven't been to the bowl in a while, but I mean, just seeing because the other groups that were a part of that were equally badass, but they just weren't name recognition people, right? You had people that were multi-time state champions, multi-time, some even national champions in like slightly lower than pro categories, right? You had masters men racers, you had guys that started teams that were mechanics for the national team, that ran and opened bike shops, that ran teams. Like all of those people were coming together to do those rides around the Rose Bowl. But I think a lot of that is still does exist, and just because of the demographic makeup of Los Angeles and the fact that cycling is and has always been maybe more in pockets, something that people gravitated towards, you always will find a mix here that I don't think you see in too many other places. It's not elitist. Sure, there's an elitist component to it, but you go out on PCH on a Saturday or Sunday, and you're going to see people from all walks of life, all stripe, who are out there training and probably going to a race on Sunday morning, probably going to do a crit together the next day or a road race or whatever. So
in addition to that, we also did a segment on Paris-Roubaix.
Oh, that's right, because you went to Paris-Roubaix.
Yeah.
Paris-Roubaix.
Thank you, Specialized Bicycles. I went there for the introduction of their first Roubaix bicycle.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So what we were trying to do was really show that cycling was stronger as a whole if all these various factions acknowledged each other and interacted with each other, which was what we were seeing happening here. That was the magic, I think. And not just be in their own little niche worlds, like the fixed gear kids are over here and the BMX kids are over here and the crit racers are over here and the pro road racers are over here. Here we were seeing all of that kind of mush together, And I think that was kind of what we were trying to convey. That was kind of what we were kind of trying to convey. Let me make that a more appropriate sentence. That's what we were conveying in making Spoken World. That was the desire. That's what I remember it being, at least.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently heard a billionaire investor and entrepreneur talk about what the ingredients are for a successful startup and something that can achieve escape velocity, a very popular term in Silicon Valley, particularly for those who achieve it. And he made this analogy about catching a wave. He's a kite surfer.
I knew that was coming. Straps or no straps?
I'm not sure. I think he's got to have straps.
Notes. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyhow, he's actually a highly accomplished kite surfer. He had video of himself kite surfing Jaws, which is an insane wave. But he said, hey, if you're too far out in front of the wave and you start paddling, by the time that wave comes, you're totally worn out. You're not going to catch it. If you're behind the wave, you're never going to paddle hard enough to catch up to the crest of the wave. If you're on that wave and you paddle at just the right time, then you just stand up and go and catch the wave. You're actually a surfer, Eric, so I don't know.
Yeah, it makes sense. And he's not the first person to say that and to use that analogy. I think that you match velocity. That's the short way of saying it without saying what I just said. No, but you have to say it the way you just said it to turn it into a metaphor that makes sense in life or business or whatever you're trying to apply that metaphor to. Yeah,
that's right.
So, but your point was going to be that that's what was going on. Were we ahead of the wave? Were we behind the wave?
My point is that for a variety of reasons, we had a great idea. I definitely think that it was a great idea. I think that we executed it well, but I think we were too far in front of the wave and we were paddling hard.
Yeah. And I think we were missing one key ingredient, which now in hindsight, I see more clearly, but the entry to the television market, even though we both thought we knew the right people and all, it doesn't work the way that we thought it worked at that time, right? I mean, that was, for me, the big lesson taken away from it was that it's a lot harder to get a show aired than I thought it was. Even if it was some nascent action sport, like brand new, and there was a market for it, it's not like we were trying to break into being a sitcom on, Wednesday at 8 or whatever the hot demographic is. Like, we were trying to make something that seemed pretty niche and therefore should have been picked up and gone. But there wasn't really a market for it yet. And even if there was, I don't know that we had the right, in to do that.
No, we didn't have the right in. We kind of thought that we did. We thought we knew the right, as Eric mentioned, we thought we knew the right set of people. We thought we were well positioned. Someone we were working with actually they'd done a deal. They were doing a show for True TV, which True TV no longer exists, I don't think. I don't know what it's called now. And then we also had contacts at another action sports network that was taking off at that time, which ironically, there's now been such a big, and that network had tons of surf content, snow content, skate content. And ironically, there's a huge crossover now between that world and the world of fixed gear culture, like people like John Cardiel, for example, right?
Right.
Yeah. So like it's massive. Like the world's converged eventually, but to go back to the wave analogy, they hadn't at that point in time. It was non-obvious to decision makers that we interfaced with. And I think it just seemed far out niche. And I don't think anyone believed that an audience existed for the work product that we made. That was part of my impression.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that it just, again, we were ahead of it. We were seeing something that wasn't yet ready to really be accepted publicly. I don't know. I mean,
it was shameful.
Was it? I don't think
no,
it was
wasn't shameful. I'm just kidding.
I think so.
When you put it that way, it sounds like.
But I think that because what's happened since then is that there was a sort of a DIY media that started to, in an ad hoc way, do what we were trying to do, and that very quickly got co-opted by the corporate backbone of cycling, to where now that doesn't exist either. It was like at first I felt a little bit that we had done something and someone else had kind of taken it and run with it, whether they ever saw what we did or not. But whatever that was has now turned into essentially sponsored content for whatever brand wants to get behind whatever the current flavor of accepted cycling culture is, right? Bike packing or randoneering 2.0 or whatever the fuck is going on now.
We're not going to say it, but I think we're both thinking about the same thing.
Yeah.
We know what we're thinking about. Yeah. We're not going to utter the name.
And, and in that case, like where did so that got its start in fixed gear culture, but it dropped fixed gear culture like a hot potato. It's no longer representing this vast collective of cycling. It's representing the collective of cycling that's going to pay the bills because someone's going to make that kind of bike or make gravel socks or whatever.
Thinking back on that trajectory, I think there are a couple of other, and I want to get back to this idea failing, how that felt, what the fallout was, and which I don't think we've actually really talked about directly in person before. Yeah. So that's going to be interesting. But thinking back at the time, like I remember we did the bicycle kitchen segment, and I believe at that time, I don't even think that bike companies, other than having track bikes, they weren't at that point there weren't a lot of commercially available fixed gear bikes. Like I believe maybe around 2007, every bike company had a fixed gear bike or a fixed gear flip-flop bike. Giant was making them. Giant rolled out the Bowery. Specialized had the Langster. I'm not going to remember the names of all the major bike companies' fixed gear bikes, but that was very much like you either rode a bike that was never meant to see the street, that was only meant to hit the boards and turn left, or you modified some other kind of bike. I mean, I remember people who were like, who were gluing freewheels to make a fixed gear. So that whole culture was very DIY, back to the punk, skate, whatever, history you want to trace that trajectory through, right? So yeah, and I remember that was called a suicide fixed gear.
Yeah, there you go.
People were excited about that, and you had to have a magic chain, which is a chain with just enough links that you had enough chain tension to be able to run a fixed gear without your chain flopping off. But so that was going on, and then we were just talking about this earlier before we started recording, but another thing that was happening was the Bicycle Film Festival. And I think that's part of what really ignited these forms of bike culture that we're talking about, the like Midnight Ridas here in LA and in a lot of other cities, because YouTube didn't exist at that time. I remember going to the Bike Film Festival which our friend Brent Barber started. Well, he wasn't our friend at the time, but I ended up I wrote about it for Bicycling Magazine, I think, or Dirt Rag. I don't know. I wrote about it somewhere. You made films that appeared in the Bicycle Film Festival, but the first time it came to LA, it was like fucking mind blowing to me. The first time I saw like some of Lucas Brunel's work, or films like Red Light Go,
Yep.
Other movies like that. I remember walking out of those screenings and just being super fucking amped to go like ride, and perhaps in an inadvisable manner, but it was really, really exciting.
Yeah, it was like watching skate videos or surf films or snowboard films or whatever. But what was interesting was that right next to those, he'd have an old film like Hell in the North, or there'd be a film about, bicycles being used in Africa, which, okay,
Your
soft
film.
pitch like our film. But I think what was going on there that we didn't really, we kind of touched on it earlier, but now we're recording. He created an event. The Bicycle Film Festival was, and still today, is an event. It's a party that all these different factions come to because they want to see the film that they're in or that represents their little corner of the world. But all of a sudden, they see all these other films. Like, there were people that were coming when we were going to the Bicycle Film Festival in 2004, 2005. Like, there were road racers that had no clue what was going on with illegal alley cat races till they got to see it on the screen. They might have heard about it or read about it, or maybe even talked to someone, over a beer in a bar, like, oh, hey, we're both wearing CDs or whatever. But to really see it in that way, I think really changed things for people. And you're right. It was because it was a live event. It wasn't like trading YouTube videos or clips on our phones like we do today. It was like you had to come and sit around in a smelly, stinky theater and watch everybody get super fired up about crazy bike films. That was cool.
Yeah, and these were films you couldn't even get them on VHS or DVD. Like, you just couldn't get them.
Some of them were just made for the festival. Like, Brent commissioned some of the films.
Right. So the Bicycle Film Festival came to your city, or you just didn't see this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of, there was the rarity, and yeah, on my part, there was just so much energy, and I had this desire to share my enthusiasm for these various disciplines of cycling with the world, and to tell the story of those connections, which, thinking back on it now, I guess like Brent was doing it before we ever tried to make a TV show about it, or it was happening concurrently, but we were taking it in a slightly different direction, and just more directly showing the threads connecting everything, I think.
Yeah, I think we were looking to create something that could be built upon.
Yeah.
That wasn't just a one and done. I mean, a festival is amazing, and it is its own unique thing. It's a party with movies that comes to your town, but the TV show concept was something that had it worked, had we not been a little bit ahead of the wave, as you rightly said, I think that would have grown and found its own complexities through the process of doing it. And as people saw it, and I would assume would have reached out to say, hey, come check out my scene. That would have been, to me, that's what it was going to lead to, was the communication between the communities was going to have this show that was a conduit for that representation that people wanted and were only getting through a once in a year festival or some, zine or flyers or whatever they were making or to exchange with each other. It would move it out of just the core audience to a bigger audience.
That was part of the concept for the show also that I don't think we've talked about. Our pilot was based on the LA scene, but our desire was to show these scenes around the world, to take people,
right.
Like, it was the spoken world. And in LA, those were the pieces of the puzzle, but there are different puzzle pieces in different parts of the world. Yeah. And like, I think that's also what we were both experiencing at the time, because we also both were traveling quite a bit with our bikes for work.
Yeah. No, we knew. I mean, I think at that point I'd been up in Montreal and had seen a whole crazy ice racing scene up there and thought, oh, well, if we can get to that point, like that's a story we could go tell. You know, we were certainly conscious of the scenes that we had either encountered ourselves in travel for our own respective work or through just word of mouth, and knowing that there was a lot more out there that we could fit into this theme. And to really say that our approach to it was the glue that was going to connect those things together, that we were going to help people across that threshold of understanding how these things might relate by not only showing them how it related, but really by you being on camera, asking the right questions and talking to people and making those connections so that it clicked in people's minds.
And not to jump too far ahead, but ironically, I actually think that there's still a lack of that connection today, in spite of everything that's propagated on YouTube or through outlets like Pink Bike, Cycling Tips, many others, which are all excellent publications. But if you just look at, for example, what's happening in the gravel world and how it's progressed over time, and I started writing about gravel in whenever the Trans Iowa race started, which I think is maybe 2003 or 2004, was maybe right around the same time. But that went from absolutely lunatic friends, some dudes at a bike shop in Iowa having an insane 350 plus mile race, to then things like Dirty Kansas today being one of the most iconic races in the world, I would say at this point.
Doesn't it sell out like within a day of them announcing entries?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think part of what I see in that community is, why do people love gravel riding? They want to be away from cars. They want to experience a less dead serious vibe than road racing, but they do actually want to compete.
Yeah.
Many of them.
Yeah.
Some people just want to participate. It's the business in the front, party in the back kind of mentality, as I've heard it described. They like the scenery, like they like what they see when they're out there, and they like that at the end of the event, they're like going to drink a beer and eat a burrito or pizza or whatever and hang out, and that it's really intense and pushes them past their limits. But at the same time, mountain biking, has like totally atrophied, is almost dying, but I see it starting to rise again, because once you start adding turns to that gravel experience, like you're mountain biking more or less. And like, I think over time, that's where that whole scene is going to shift. And I think you see it a little bit with like the bike packing stuff, but like the more people get off road and explore, it just seems inevitable to me that that's going to converge with, oh, we also could have like a bit more of a competitive atmosphere, and then you're mountain bike racing.
Well, don't you feel like that's what makes these, the sort of enduro format interesting to people? I mean, because that's what's working in mountain biking, but now you see grinduro, like you see it trickling into the gravel grinder world, where there are stages. Yeah, there's a bunch of people that are going to go fast and compete to get across the line first, but really people are showing up because it's a weekend event and they're going to see their friends. They're going to see some cool bands. They're going to drink some beers, eat some burritos, as you said, and they're going to participate in bike culture, whatever that means to them. If that means like coming trained up and ready to go and fucking tri-bar aero position on your gravel bike so that you get a couple extra seconds off your time on each stage, or if that means showing up on an old clunker and showing off the old clunker and still crossing the finish line within the cut and being a part of the whole thing, right?
I've said it before and I'll say it again. The future is cross-country mountain biking. That's where we're headed.
It's going to come back to that, really. Like,
it is. That's totally where we're headed, because grinduro is an intermediate step. And grinduro, I haven't participated, but from talking to participants, there are more and more elements that just sound like, this is what a mountain bike race used to be like. And the trails that they're riding and so on, it's getting closer and closer to mountain biking. Well,
I mean, both of us have raced cyclocross here in the LA area. And the reality is, like, most of those courses, especially when I was racing, were set up for mountain bikers. And it was the mountain bikers that won the races.
I've never raced cross here.
It was also the mountain it was the mountain bikers that sandbagged the races too, right? Because they could be, we're getting a different rabbit hole.
There's sandbaggers in every race.
But I think
sometimes it's me.
Yeah, people have fun experimenting with the wrong kind of bike for a particular terrain, and eventually it just kind of leans into a full circle, like figuring out like, the same thing happened in surfing. The same thing happens in skateboarding. Like people get all excited about retro equipment in all of these sports, cycling, whatever, you know, and they have fun with that for a little while they're in their 20s and their knees still work. And then they realize like, oh, there's actually like, there's a full suspension mountain bike that gets me down the hill, and the clunker's cute. That was cool that they did that to begin with, but
I'm still waiting for giant pants to come back in skateboarding.
never, not going to happen, nor the small wheels.
I saw a kid recently they had to be 40 mil wheels.
Yeah, no.
It's like the kid had Tic Tacs on his trucks.
No.
We've digressed a little bit.
Yeah, a lot.
We put this show together, put a lot of heart and soul into it. We probably spent, I think that this unfolded over the course of maybe 6 months.
Yeah, off and on, but pretty consistently. Yeah, definitely through the summer and into the fall. I would say spring into the fall. Yeah.
The spring moved into fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we kept going. And then you handled all of the production side of it, edited the show.
Yeah, we produced the thing. I mean, we had a solid pilot. I was not at that point. I'd have to look and see. I certainly had other work and other business, and I was trying to run a business too at the same time, which was not easy. And you had certainly career obligations and other things going on in your life. And I kind of feel like, and I have because it didn't really bother me in a long-term way. I was super bummed that we didn't sell it, but I was super proud that we had made it. And I guess in my mind, I always thought like, well, someday maybe there'll be the right opportunity and we can pull it out and show it. Like there was no disappointment to me that like we really failed. Like we failed at selling it, which I didn't really feel like I contributed very much to trying very hard at doing anyway. Like I was like, well, we made it. John can sell it, or whoever we were talking to at the time. Right.
Right.
Like, and then when that didn't happen, I don't know. Like it was a bummer because there was obviously a dream to do a lot more with it. And it was obvious that we could have done a lot more with it, provided someone had come along to fund it, and that there was a place where people could see it, that we weren't just doing it for our own like wanky experience. But that was my experience with it. Like to me, the failure was that I didn't know enough about how to help sell it, and the people we were counting on to sell it couldn't get it sold, and then it just kind of fizzled. The experience of making it, I wouldn't change that at all. That was awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was an awesome experience making it. At the time, my conclusion was our idea was ahead of its time. I thought it was a great idea. Even talking about it now, I think it's a great idea. So if somebody out there wants to fund this idea, I think we're ready to go again. I think we could do it. And I think now is actually the perfect time to do it.
We own the IP.
And then I do remember for me personally being very disappointed that it didn't sell, because I had that and I had a couple of other TV projects in development at the time and some auditions for some TV opportunities that at that time it felt like they would have been life-changing things to me. Like, oh, if I could have made this happen or one of those other things happen, it really would have been transformative. And there are a lot of really exciting, interesting things happening in my career at that time. And a lot of them actually panned out and they went really well. But on the TV side, stuff didn't pan out that year over the course of the next couple of years. And I had a desire to be doing it and to be in front of the camera. It didn't happen. And it was disappointing and like depressing to me. And then the window kind of shut, or I wasn't connected to the right opportunities anymore. And it was a bummer.
I was certainly conscious of that. And I think for me, the other disappointment for me was that I wished I could have done more to service that desire that you had. Like your interest in that was really important. And it was really important to me to do the best I could to help make that happen for both of us, but particularly for the reasons you just said. You had a very strong interest in that. And that's where I kind of felt like I was trying to carry too much weight with my own company, with what I was doing, with jobs that I was getting through that realm, and really not knowing what the fuck I was doing in television to even be able to help sell the thing.
I didn't know what I was doing either.
But I guess that, to me, that was like a disappointment, that was another disappointment in the failure of it, was that I felt like I let you down in not and I don't know what, I mean, it's kind of I don't know what imposter syndrome.
You didn't let me
like,
down.
I don't know what I could have done differently, but
the point of this for me is not to like have some heavy conversation.
No, I know.
Yeah, I really didn't have that feeling at all. I think that without getting into the weeds too much, we had certain expectations of what was going to happen with the work product at the end of our experience with people who were helping us, and their life and career circumstances kind of changed. Some of our connections we thought we had didn't pan out, and whatever. It's like it didn't happen. It was disappointing, and then it was over. And now we have a DVD in a dusty vault somewhere. Part of which
I found all the tapes. I have all the tapes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The only disappointment I had was that we didn't sell the show. And I think that there are aspects of that. We controlled as much as we could control, which is all you can ever do. And then it didn't happen. There's a certain, you have to paddle at the right time and whatever, our timing was off, but there's also an element of luck in all of this. And we tried to control our luck as much as we could. It just didn't happen. And sometimes things don't pan out. Yeah. But to relate this back to the theme of Choose the Hard Way, which is about peak performance, lessons learned at the limits of human experience, and the obstacles people overcome to do great things. I've said this a few times on different episodes, but one of the most important things I've learned over the course of more than 20 years of working with the world's top performers across a broad variety of disciplines is that the world's best also run into obstacles. They have failures like this, and they have them at scale. They probably have way more than any of us have had in our lifetimes. But when they run into the obstacles, they understand and emotionally process it in a way that's just accepts that that's part of the process. And I think with this particular domain where we were operating with this project, I had so little experience with it and such desire for that to turn into something that for me, it was like after I had, the 3 or 4 shots I had at this stuff fall through, like that was just it. I was super defeated, and I didn't know how to like find my footing and find a way back in. And I found my way into other things, which is, that's probably where my life and career were supposed to go. But at the time, it was really disappointing. And I didn't have the wherewithal, or I didn't understand that, you come up with another idea, or you take this idea and like you find another producer or distributor, whatever the case may be. And for me, that's a big learning. Like if I were to do it all over again, I still don't think we probably could have gotten the show sold or made, but I would have processed the failure differently than I think I did at the time.
That's interesting. The culture wasn't ready for it either, which was probably why no one was buying it. Like there wasn't a culture that was like, we were trying to say this culture is coming and it's going to demand something like this. But the people who held the purse strings for things like that wanted something that was like, there is an existing culture that this plugs into.
Premium Rush. They wanted the movie Premium Rush after this culture already existed.
Yeah, maybe
5 years later.
I mean, I think something else, and you're making me remember these feelings actually, which I'm thanking you for. But something else that was disappointing to me was that, and maybe not right away, but like a year or two later, let's say 2 or 3 years later, when other things started to percolate up in bike culture and in media culture that felt kind of familiar from the ideas that we were trying to generate. And I didn't feel like, someone bit my idea or our idea. But what I did feel like was that, and I didn't realize it at the time that we were making the pilot, but I really was needing creative content that I had a hand in creating. I did a lot of creative content work that was in service to a client, and I was good at it, and I got a lot better at it because it's all I really got to do. I never got the opportunity, and I think maybe I felt like, there'll be other things that'll come along where I'll get to have the IP of something, have the creative ownership of the origin of whatever it might be. But there really weren't a lot of other opportunities. I mean, certainly Trish and I went on and made our documentaries, and that's great. That serviced and satisfied and fulfilled me in a lot of ways and continues to. But there was a point where I feel like I looked at what was going on in bike culture and what we had done with spoken world, and really felt like, hey, motherfuckers, like, we did that. Like, what do you know? And again, like, I didn't feel like it got stolen from us, but I felt like, I don't know, like, I didn't have the right tools to really process it emotionally, and it bugged me. It bugged me a lot at the time, but not, like I said, not right away. 2 years later, 3 years later, I was like, why is that bothering me? But I had the same experience in skateboarding too, you know, where I felt like the stuff that Wing and I were doing when we were younger, making skateboard films or shooting on film, doing all this stuff, you know, then all of a sudden 5, 6, 7 years after we had been doing that, then it was cool to shoot on film. Then it was cool to make these kind of things, but no one was calling us to ask us to do it. Well, they might've been calling Wing, but no one was calling me and asking me to do it, you know? And I think that's been an interesting ongoing lesson. Like, I've constantly run into those kind of situations that are maybe a little untangible, like, or intangible, why they feel uncomfortable. And I don't really, I mean, this is an interesting thing to like be recording me unpacking why something that happened, you know, 15 years ago was uncomfortable, but it wasn't the only time that happened. So I don't know.
Going back to what you mentioned about the power of doing generative work, which granted we were in a way, this was derivative because we were making about a film about something that existed in the world. But I do believe we both felt a very direct connection to what we were seeing happen. And we felt like we were part of creating it, or at least I did through my participation in these different subgenres of cycling, and also in a way through the journalism I was doing, because I was writing about in what was happening in these different communities. And to me, part of what I was doing was trying to elevate this thing, because they weren't easy stories to sell. I remember having to really aggressively persuade and provide social proof to the editors I was working with, particularly at certain outlet I'm not going to mention, who was the primary market for these stories. They're like, hey, this is actually worth paying attention to, and it's going to be something. And in that way, like, once those stories came out, it created a virtuous cycle where it was part of like what was fueling the flames, the same way the Bicycle Film Festival was, and other media that was out there in the world. But I say all of that by way of saying that, like, taking on a creative project where we were in charge and we were making the thing we wanted to see in the world, like, felt awesome. And that is a journalist where I was always out trying to capture things that other people were doing and not being the person doing the thing myself. That's part of what I didn't love about journalism, because there's and I have a ton of respect for journalists, and it's definitely an art form, and you have to be highly skilled to do it. But I wanted to be making something in the world, not recording or being witness to something someone else was doing, which is what I often felt like as a journalist.
That's interesting. I see in all the action sports or gravity sports or however you want to kind of create a container around these things, all the ones that have been involved in or am involved in over 30, 40 years of my life, it's very rare that you encounter stories that are authentic, because unfortunately, no one really pays for that. So as soon as there's that sort of corporate interest, even if it's sort of soft and way in the background, it colors it. And that was something exciting about what was going on in the culture at the time that we were looking at this stuff. And I think certainly in what we were doing, because we were doing it out of our own blood, sweat, and tears. Like, no one was coming along and giving us money to do it. So the stories felt authentic. And I think that kind of, it's so fleeting, whether it's surfing or climbing or skating or cycling or any aspect within those sports, trad climbing versus alpinism, or, fixed gear versus crit racing. Like, it's rare that you actually encounter it on an authentic level, that if you're someone who participates in it and has a passion for it, you relate to it without feeling like something's being sold to you. And I feel like that's been true through the whole time that I've been doing these things. Now, of course, it's even more, it's heightened because of technology and devices. And I mean, I'm almost like constantly paranoid. Everything's being sold to me. Right. But there's something about the stories that we were trying to tell. And again, through the journalistic work that you were doing, to pull out of the people that worked at the Bite Kitchen. No, don't answer this like you're answering it to some corporate network media. Like, this is us. We ride. We're talking rider to rider. Like, that's pretty cool, you know? And I think people always are going to want that.
Yeah, that aspect of being a participant, observer, transmitting whatever the cool thing is that you're experiencing to other people versus perhaps altering it, taking it in a different direction because you don't understand what it is that you're observing. And granted, like through observation and trying to tell a story, you're always altering something in some way. But like, yeah, I agree with you. It's a really uncommon thing to get to experience as a storyteller. But part of what came, we haven't talked about this, but part of what came shortly after we made the spoken world, which on a technical level, people in 2019 probably can't comprehend some of the technical complexities, for example, of trying to capture POV footage on a bike at that.
Yeah, we didn't have GoPros.
I remember riding with like a Camelback pack with the bladder taken out, with a DV cam shoved into that with a cable. And I remember it was like a big deal that you had access to the lipstick cameras that we could mount to the helmet.
Right.
Or like
That's
wherever.
Right.
And then, which you definitely, like you had to rent from somewhere.
Well, I don't remember, but
yeah, I don't know. But like it was part of a camera package. It wasn't like just something you had sitting around. And then like once you had it on the helmet, you also had to make sure you had it oriented correctly, because it was just a cylinder.
Yeah, the technology was not what it is today.
The technology was not what it is today. And yeah, I remember actually when I went to Paris-Roubaix with Specialized Bicycles, going out, we did a recon ride with some Gerolsteiner riders, and you know, like every time you get a group of cycling journalists together like that, it gets a little bit chippy. So people were going pretty hard, and we started, I remember right like when we hit the first sector of cobbles, I was having some kind of camera issue, and I had to stop and like fuck around with the camera for 2 minutes, and then it was just like me alone on the cobbles for the next whatever, like 20 minutes while I was trying to get across this section. And there's definitely like a pecking order, like based on how fast you are within like any kind of culture like that. So like, yeah, I was like the last dude rolling up 15 minutes after everyone else. But what would come later is there would be the GoPro. Before there was a GoPro, there would be YouTube. And a couple of years after we made this project, maybe it was before there was YouTube, but Bicycling Magazine was starting to introduce video. And they knew some of the work that I've been doing because of some of my writing that I've been doing around this topic, and that I've been messing around with video stuff. And I ended up making a video for them called Getting Fixed, about like, it was just like a 2-minute short video about fixed gear culture. I think I might have it up on my YouTube page, but I also have one of the segments from Spoken World up on YouTube. I'll put links in the show notes to both, but because of when they were recorded and what we shot them on, it's like totally pixelated. It doesn't look real great on YouTube.
Yeah, it was probably high. Well, it wouldn't have been high.
It wasn't high. We were definitely shooting on
we were into
DV.
Yeah.
But I don't know what it was. The aspect ratio, whatever. It just doesn't translate well. Or how I transferred it onto YouTube, which may not have been perfect. But yeah, YouTube came around a few years later, and then anyone anywhere could be making videos about anything. And that transformed all action sports, and it also definitely transformed the worlds where we were working. And today it's like those things, it's just like skateboarding used to be, where like, you know, if someone does like a 10-stair handrail and there wasn't someone there with a Sony DV cam with the fisheye lens, did it really happen?
Right.
Yeah. And now it's like, did you go do your fixed gear ride in the city or go race a CBR crate here in LA without your GoPro or your Rilo cam or whatever? Like, it didn't happen.
But the one thing that I would add to what YouTube brought to the equation is comments. The thing that, I mean, we could make videos and there were ways you could share video, maybe not as easily and not as readily and not to as many people. But YouTube definitely increased all of that. It made it a lot easier to upload and reach as many people as wanted to look at it. But it also gave all those people the opportunity to communicate back or about what they watched. And I think that's kind of a game changer too.
You mean trolling?
No, not necessarily. Okay. I mean, sure, that's part of it. But I think that, you know, when you make a TV show or pilot or anything that's just broadcast like that, sure, people could write in or people could, now I guess they could email in, but that's kind of contained. And the thing that's interesting about YouTube, and I think one of the reasons why YouTube in all of these different areas has pretty much blown past any kind of organized or controlled media, with the exception of like watching a contest live or a race live on TV. And even then, if you're streaming it on your computer, you can comment as you go along. People are participating through the sort of algorithmic distance of that aspect of it. And I think that's a game changer too. That wasn't, you know, that's certainly one reason why I don't think we could go back to finding a place for spoken word on a network today. Because that community that we were trying to get together and show people like, hey, you guys over here should talk to these guys over here, or at least know that you're kindred spirits, whatever. Like what we were trying to do in the vessel that we were making now just happens on our phones.
Yeah, totally. People around the world are connected through these videos. They're dropping in on each other's scenes. They're seeing cool things they haven't seen before. And like you were mentioning when we were talking earlier about that, I'm going to get this wrong. Is it GX10?
Oh, the GX1000 crew.
GX1000 crew. I sound like a dumb old man right now.
No. I just learned about him 2 days ago. So
yeah, but that's a skate crew in the Bay Area in San Francisco doing insane next level, like Tony Hawk pro skater in real life type stuff at high speed with high consequences. And whatever they're doing, it's just like, you know, a couple of years after we did our thing, like MASH popped up. Right. And it totally different, but like a really interesting outcropping of what was happening in the communities where we were participating and documenting. And like, man, like that kicked off like a whole other genre of fixed gear, freestyle, hill bombing, insane stuff.
And a brand.
Yeah. A lasting, like one
which
of the
is also
brands
that's another aspect of the GX1000 is like, you know, if you like the clip, you can buy the hat.
Yeah.
Or the t-shirt or the jacket.
Get the flat brim.
Or,
get it today.
Or like a board or whatever. Yeah.
Or a curve bill, however you roll.
I like to make my own curve bill. I like to get the flat and then...
The flat brims aren't really made for curving though. They don't.
I know. That's why I like to break the spine, just like a book. You know, like some people don't like to break the spine of the book, and other people like it to lay flat on the table while they drink their coffee. I don't know.
You break it into two parts, and then you have it's like an army pup tent.
The hat?
Or are you curving it?
No, I like to like very meticulously over time. Like, yeah, I kind of like I round it.
You round it,
yeah.
Because when you said you break the spine, you made it sound like.
Well, I was talking about the book. Yeah, no, I mean the hat.
Okay,
I mean,
the hat's a curvature process.
Yeah, but I don't like it to get so curved, you know, that I look like some kind of skull chewing, like tuck my flannel into my jeans, my Wrangler jeans.
Right. Nothing against people chewing skull, tucking into their Wranglers.
I love that song.
However you roll, just do it. Get out there and get after it.
I'm going to ride my horse.
What else have you got?
I don't know. I don't know really where we're going with this. So, yeah, I got nothing.
I mean, this is like skateboarding. It's like riding in the city itself. Part of the beauty of it is that you're transforming and reinterpreting the terrain as you traverse it, and that's what our conversation has done today. It's taken.
Oh, I do have something else.
Okay.
You made me think of it just in saying that, even though you're joking around a little bit.
I'm not joking around. I'm being serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
you know, it's, I would say, fairly certain that there are a bunch of young people today in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s, as we were then, and maybe younger, who are creating their own crazy hybrid media circus around their disparate scenes and what's connecting. So I think what we did still lives, maybe disconnected from what we did, and certainly we didn't influence anybody because they didn't see it, but I think the spirit of it is still there. I think that there is still a DIY, despite all the gravel socks and all the like kind of branded content that pretty much dominates the space that we were trying to occupy. I do think that there are people who still, just for the love of being that person in their little collective, whose contribution is to be on camera interviewing people, or to be holding the camera, shooting the stuff, or to be editing all the things together for their bros, even if that's all it's for, that's still happening. And that makes me happy, you know, to know that that idea of the collective being bigger than just what we ride or how we ride or where we ride starts to include all these other things. Someone's in a band, someone starts a zine, someone shoots a video. I think all that still goes on, and that's cool. And I think that's what we were doing too. Like it didn't work the way we wanted it to, but we filled that space of the collective for that time.
And part of what's magical about those moments in time is that they aren't forever. And I think for me, and I know for you as well, we both continued to be and are today still involved in cycling in various different ways. I think when I look back on that specific project, like you, I'm really glad that we did it, and for a variety of reasons. But when I think about what are some of the takeaways that I had that I think would be valuable for other people to hear about, I think for me, one of them is when you're someone who has a passion for making things, and like, I guess today what would be called a creator, and I'm doing air quotes, but someone who's truly passionate about doing something creative and making things, and not just pointing a camera at yourself. And in this project, I was in front of the camera, but it wasn't about that. Like, turn your camera around, stop pointing it at yourself, point it at the world, take a look at what's going on around you. If there's a scene, be part of it, participate in it, help it grow, add whatever's great about you, give it to the thing that you love, and it'll help it grow. And also, don't get sidetracked. Like, both of us at that time, we were like, we had to make money, man. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I was doing what I had to do to make money. You were doing what you had to do to make money. We rolled the dice on something. And after that, like, we kept channeling our creative energy in other directions. For me, with that specific project and what I was doing with video work at the time, which I was kind of like starting to do a lot of video work on my own then, and I've always been passionate about, and then I kind of like just dropped it. Like, I was making a lot of stuff early YouTube days about cool, weird things I saw going on in the world around me. And then I made this, I was just like, hey, I don't have a way to make money doing this. This isn't monetizable. Therefore, it's not worth my time. And that's what you have to do sometimes in life. But also, don't just do things because, hey, like, it's something I can monetize or I have to monetize it. You have to do, if you feel like deeply drawn to doing something, which for me, I was deeply drawn to trying to find ways to tell that story. And like, we just did it. There wasn't a payoff. And in some ways, I wish I would have like kept doing more making stuff around that particular community, at least on the video side, which I kind of didn't really do too much of after this project.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's, I'm just going to say, I would just say the same thing you just said, basically, because I do think that it's incredibly valuable and incredibly important to our like lifelong learning. The arc of learning that we all go through is experiential, especially if what we've gravitated towards are these types of activities that are physical, play-based things that we're doing out in the streets or out in the forest or whatever it is, that around those things there's a collective, and that collective does contribute more in the form of being creative, whether it's making music or making films or writing about it or being the journalist in the group. All of those things are contributing to everybody's growth, everybody's lifelong learning arc. We're contributing to each other's. And that's what I mean when I say, like, it inspires me to know that there's probably some version of what we did being made in some other crew. And we may never see it, but it's serving them in the way that what we did served us. Even if it just served two people's friendship, it is worth doing.
Yeah. So if you're doing something and you're drawn to doing it, don't stop. Just
right.
Keep doing that thing.
Yeah. It's just, you can't do it for the affected, the mediated reason. I think that's what you're getting at when you're saying, like, turn your phone around. Shoot the things that you're seeing in the world, not you in the world. We've been, like, conditioned by this mediated life, technology, whatever, to think that way. And the reality is we've been given these tools that we can do all kinds of really amazing creative things with. And being creative is fun. Like, you get something out of it that's worth way more than what anybody's ever going to pay you in clicks or likes or bitcoins or whatever it might be, right? So, and that's what we were doing. We were just making something. I mean, in a way, like, we made a zine. We just made it on video.
It was really expensive.
It took a lot longer.
It was a really expensive zine.
Yeah.
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 But yeah, I mean,
but the principle is a similar thing. Like,
yeah, no, I think that's a great analogy. And I didn't mention that earlier when I was kind of talking about my own personal experiences with skateboarding, because for me, the areas where I, like, went a lot deeper with my creative expression, because I wasn't a great skateboarder, it went more in the direction of punk rock, hardcore, playing guitar in bands, and then making zines, or particularly working on Project KC, the premier punk rock hardcore zine in Kansas City from, I think, 91 to 93.
There you go.
Yeah, working with my buddies. Started by my friend Scott Leathers, who's the founder.
I mean,
Good job, Scott.
I've been thinking a lot about zines lately, because I think that the whole idea there is so much what we're trying to do with this show, and what the possibility is with social media. That's kind of a missed opportunity, because, you know, you learned about other scenes, right? If some band came to your town, you gave them a copy of your zine, and chances are, if they had made a zine, or if someone in their scene, you know, you traded zines. So all of a sudden, it was like you knew what was going on in St. Louis or in Chicago or in Cleveland. Like, I know that was true for us as skateboard kids, you know, and it trickled over into punk rock and whatever else. It was like a music scene thing. And I know from talking to guys like Steve Knievel, like, they did the same thing when their little bike scenes. Again, related to punk rock, related to skateboarding. It was this way of sharing culture, of sharing, like, hey, we got a little collective too. We're not, like, in beef with you guys. We're like, we're one of you. Like, hey, check it out. Like, look at how big the community is. Like, look at the world growing. That's the reason to make this kind of stuff and to have fun doing it, is to introduce yourself to other selves.
My closing thought is, because what I want to wrap this up. The dogs are barking. They're hungry. And that's Buster in the background for anybody who recognizes his bark from a previous episode. But hearing you talk about clicks and scenes, it reminds me of the movie The Warriors, but more specifically the bike race, The Warriors. And I don't know if that movie is on YouTube, but I'm going to try to find it. That's one of the coolest films I ever saw in the Bicycle Film Festival. If you haven't seen it, I think you're going to dig it. I think it's going to fucking blow your mind. So I'll throw that in the show notes. Thanks everybody for listening. This is Choose the Hard Way. This is Andrew Vontz, and with my guest, Eric Matthies. Eric, great to have you here. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me back. It was fun.
If you have questions, comments, feedback, or want to suggest a guest, please reach out to @hardwaypod on social or email me at choosethehardway@gmail.com. Please take a moment to hit 5 stars in Spotify or iTunes and leave a 1-word review. That helps more people connect with the powerful stories my guests share, and I really appreciate the support. You are what you overcome. Choose the hard way.